Thank you for listening to this episode, and follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, @ChrisBeanOfficial, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com. Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website. This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today, we have the pleasure of diving into the fascinating world of advertising and entrepreneurship with our esteemed guest, Robert Brill. Robert, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Robert, so let's start in with a little bit of your background. Tell me a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, so I'm first of all, personally, I'm married. I have a 5-year-old boy named Henry, and um, I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to work from home and spend a lot of time with the family. At least be in the general area here, in terms of time with the family and whatnot. 21 years in working in advertising, 11 years having bootstrapped my agency, which is called Brill Media. And yeah, I'm an advertising guy. I like the Dodgers, fan of Lionel Messi on the Inter Miami team, and I like sci-fi stuff.
Wonderful. And, I have to say, you are one of the few guests that I have asked that question. I always ask that question to start out with. You're one of
Yeah,
the few guests that talked about the personal side
yeah,
before the business side. And I have to say that is wonderful because, of course, we are people, moreover, and first off, before we are whoever we are in business. So I really like that.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, Robert, of course, we're going to dive into the business side, and you have
Cool.
a remarkable journey in advertising that spans over 20 years.
Yeah.
Can you take me back to the moment when you first made that leap from being an employee and then venturing into leadership? What was your motivation to start?
So leadership, look, I think the first time I would characterize myself as a leader is when I got promoted to a supervisor, um, in about 4 or 5 years into my career. And then from then on, I had some level of leadership, director of digital media, vice president, etc. Leadership comes in all different shapes and sizes, and sometimes titles just reflect knowledge and insight about a business. But I've had teams and whatnot that reported to me and learned things along the way there. Um, but I guess the first moment I took that title of supervisor, I would say, and I was only in that job for maybe 7 months, 8 months, maybe 9 months. It just wasn't the right fit, and I moved on to another agency. Um, when I really jumped from being employed somewhere to having my own thing was in 2013. I had spent a decade in the business at that point, and all the stars aligned, and I felt like it was the right moment. And I learned I got punched in the face figuratively by the business. I learned that I thought if you're good at something, you're just good at something and you can make a business out of it. What I learned is that if you don't know how to sell, then money isn't going to just drop from the sky. And I also learned I don't want to take big financial risks because in the advertising business, like if you run $100,000 advertising campaign, often you will have to front that money and then get paid 30, 60, 90 days later. I was like, ooh, I don't know how to deal with that. So I had to overcome those two things very early on before I could even really set up my business for growth.
And okay, so let's talk about that just for a few minutes here. Did that look like hiring people or bringing people on board that could do those things, or is that just you figuring out as you went? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things an entrepreneur can do is understand when they need to lean back or push forward. And I decided to lean back at that moment, meaning I it didn't seem I wasn't confident enough to say let's hire people because at some point I'm funding this whole thing myself and I need runway. So I decided I'm going to I'm going to figure it out. I have to push through it. And then once I know how to do something, then I will have an opportunity for other people to do it for me. So it looked like me learning how to sell. And so I spent about 2 years trying to figure out product market fit, which in practice was I'm going to talk to a bunch of people either on the phone or I'm going to go to conferences and networking events. And I'm going to tell people what I do. And if their eyes roll over in the back of their head and glaze over, I know that I'm not doing a good job telling them what I do, or I'm not talking to the right audience, which is another lesson learned. Um, so it took me 2 years to figure out the right words to say in order to get someone to say, cool, let's have another conversation. I want to learn more. I learned that big words, jargony words are not really that interesting. Like, in our business, like there's this programmatic, which is using data targeting automation. There's real-time bidding, hyper-local even though hyper-local is kind of like people understand what that is because it has the word local in it. So it's a very narrow target. But, when you talk to restaurants, what do they want? They want butts in seats in hours where their restaurant isn't filled up. So the more I can talk to someone's pain points, the more likely that person was going to be interested in what we have to say. Less about me, more about you.
And I think there's a connection between sales and and being a comedian, because both of them you have to respond appropriately to the audience, and whether that is you're selling whoever it is on whatever it is that you're selling, you have to
Yeah,
be willing to be flexible in how you deliver that, and you have to be willing to make the mistakes in order for it to happen, just like it is for a comedian. Of course, the comedian is up on stage and they get laughed at or booed off stage if they don't tell the joke appropriately, but there's I think there's a through line, a connection between those two, because you're both in the way that you communicate the information. And you can have the same verbiage, but if you tell it in a different way, or you have the pause at a different spot, it falls flat as opposed to working brilliantly.
absolutely. And on the topic of comedy, one of the things I want to do is I want to go to what's it called? Not acting. It's acting school, but it's improv. I want to go to improv. I think improv is I've been wanting to do this for years. I just haven't done it yet, and for that exact reason, right? Like you're telling stories, you're getting people to pay attention to you in a way that is meaningful, and if you can do it with humor, it'll work better. One of the things I did early on is I went to Toastmasters
Mm.
because I had this problem. I was relatively senior in the business, but I didn't have a lot of experience. I didn't have a lot of time in the business. So like at 5, 6 years in my career, I was a director of digital media. So I was selling to and working with people. Like I was maybe 29 years old and I was working with people who were in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. You just time in market, you're going to be more confident and know what you know. I was not, I knew what I knew, but I wasn't very confident about it. So Toastmasters was gave me a dramatic sense of self in my ability to communicate effectively. So much so that I started winning arguments and whatnot. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So Toastmasters, huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so you talked about being an improv. Improv, I think, is really interesting because it gives you an opportunity. Well, it forces you to think on your toes. And in
Yeah.
sales, you have to be able to think on your toes and pivot at the necessary moments. And if you can have experience doing that in a fun type setting, in an improv, then that is a wonderful. If you can do that with the intentionality that you seemingly have of applying that to the business world outside of there.
Yeah. People will just respond to you better if you're funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Let's talk about bootstrapping. You brought a business from zero all the way through to multi-millions in revenue, and of course, that's no small feat. I'm curious, can you share some key strategies or lessons from your experience in building your own agency, and maybe what were some pivotal moments that you experienced on this journey?
Yeah. Oh, there's many to think about. Usually the most important milestones for us were um, you have a limited when you're starting out, you usually have a limited amount of cash or no cash, so you've got to make strategic decisions. So the more you can do yourself and learn how to do yourself, the better off you'll be. Until such time that you have so much work that you need to hire out. So making that first hire is critical. Finding the right person and also the timing of that is going to be important. So I knew that I had revenue coming in and sort of like bigger deals coming in when I made my first hire. There was one summer where we tripled our staff, and I was working more than when I had lower staff, a few years later. And what I learned from that is we need process systems and processes or standard operating procedure. And like I don't go into business because I want SOPs, just like I don't go into business because I want to do invoicing or any of that stuff. I go into business to stay in the work that I love and to be able to maybe improve myself professionally, push myself a little bit, not for SOPs. But SOPs have been a massive unlock for our business because for several reasons. Number one, everyone knows where their responsibility starts and where it ends, and when someone else needs to pick up the task. Secondly, because people are happier and more confident in their job, they stay in the business longer, which means when they stay in the business longer, you get the benefit of historical learnings, which means for me as the owner, I spend less time training new people and now no time training new people. And we have the benefit of many years of experience inside our organization and how we do things. So since this standard operating procedure is going to be critical. And then the last thing is, I have decided recently I never want to be in business again without a mastermind or a coach. Because there are many things that I don't know. I know what I know what I don't know, and then I don't know what I don't know. And surrounding myself with expensive, smart, and people, empathetic people, both coaches and other business owners, have given me insight into a whole world of new opportunities that have produced revenue for us and that have changed the way we operate our business. So I think what I would do earlier if I had to change something is I would go back and spend tens of thousands of dollars on coaches and masterminds earlier on in this process. Not at the very beginning, because at the very beginning, time is oxygen. I'm sorry, money is oxygen. You don't have money, then you can't have a business. But yeah, coaches and masterminds, critical.
All right, so I'm going to go to SOPs first, and then we'll circle back around to coaches and masterminds. SOPs, I think are it's hilarious how many businesses are functioning today without SOPs or without a written up SOP. Everybody, they have their own kind of SOPs in their brain, but it's not standardized at that point, so it's not really an SOP. What point in the business do you think that SOPs are important? Is it before you get that first employee? So let's start from the beginning, right? And then we'll kind of go back through if you already have employees. But if you're starting out, you have no employees, do you have SOPs in line first, or does that happen as you take on employees, or what does that look like?
I think my advice, what I did is very different, right? But what my advice would be, start writing down the tasks that you do repeatedly and the order in which you do them. What am I doing and what's the order? At the very least, when you hire someone, you'll have something that you can say here, this is how I'm doing things. At the most, you're going to start optimizing your own process in a very effective way because you now have a chance to look at something and say, why do I keep doing this random thing that isn't necessary? Part of that process is going to be you want some feedback from someone else, like, My wife is a really important part of the consultation. She's not part of the business. She has no ownership of the business, but she's a exceptionally valuable advisor to give me insight into what to do because she's far enough away from the business that she can actually see things, see the forest for the trees. So you want a friend, a partner, a business person. You want someone like that to kind of like maybe react to what your processes are that can maybe give you some good feedback. Hence, masterminds and coaches. You may or may not have the money for that, but anyone who you respect in the business. So write stuff down. And when you hire someone, you can say, these are the 10 things that I do every time I'm selling, or here are the 10 things I do every time I need to fulfill on a campaign, or the 10 things I do when I do reporting. And that process evolves. As soon as you can, as soon as you find yourself doing repetitive tasks, write that stuff down.
Now, let's say we have somebody who's already in business, been in business for a length of time, already has a handful of employees, but doesn't have any finalized SOPs, because that frequently that's the case.
Mhm.
What does that process look like?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the sort of homegrown way that we did it, and then I'll share with you a system that we paid for that we learned, which was really cool too. So the homegrown way that we did it is I hired. So what happened was like I said, we tripled our staff. No one was happy. I was working more than prior to tripling our staff, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. I was the person who I'd hired to take over my a significant part of my job because I was having my first child quit. Literally, her last day was the day my child was born. I was like, okay, this didn't work out very well. Um, and so I talked to some people. A friend of mine who is very smart in the business. Anyway, he came on as our chief operating officer ultimately because he was like, "You don't have a standard operating procedure." It's like, "Oh, cool. No one ever told me that's a thing." So he came in. We took the whole team to Vegas. Anyway, so him and I, you don't have to do this in Vegas, but it's a nice atmosphere. We sat down by the pool and we went to Park MGM, so at the Italy, and he's like, "All right, when a campaign needs to launch, what do you do?" I just rattled stuff off to him. He took notes. Okay, when a campaign is winding down, what do you do? Rattle stuff off, take notes. That turned into an SOP, a set of documentation that everyone should be following. The challenge with SOPs is that you need someone to enforce that because just writing it down doesn't mean much unless people are looking at it like every day and it's being enforced. So when you're not following the process, like you need to be a little slap on the hand saying you're not following the process. Much so that took us for about maybe 3 years. And then we implemented a different process where we visualized every part of our business. So there's a sales growth engine. Here the in a visual format, here are all the things that happen to go from someone never hearing about us to signing a contract with us. That was our growth engine for sales. Then you have a growth engine for operations. Like what does it visually look like? What are all the steps from, a campaign gets handed off to the operations team, to the buying team. It launches, it fulfills, reporting, dashboards, and then it ends. And what do you do when it ends? Every step of that process has a playbook attached to it. Okay, when a lead goes into HubSpot or CRM, what are the actions that happen around that? Well, it goes into HubSpot, then you send a thank you email, then you get a call. The seller needs to follow up 7 times, all these different actions. So it's much more sort of uh, there's a visual reminder of how things are working. And again, you need people to ensure that process is enforced. So evolution of SOPs was important for us and very helpful.
Now, if you have these operating procedures in place, or when you have these operating procedures in place, maybe would be a better way, but how often do you go through and audit these to, one, make sure they're up to date with what you're doing, but then also to make sure that your employees are following through and doing and following them appropriately?
Yeah. So auditing should happen every 90 to 120 days. That's number one. Number two, you need owners of the SOPs in different parts of the process. Number three, you need individuals on the organization that can actually um, enforce these. So whether it's a chief operating officer or head of accounts or some person that has overview over the business, we need someone that ensures that, like, you know, here's the process. You should be doing X, Y, and Z. You can't have, you need some sort of operations person to enforce it.
Sure. Now, when, all right, you have these operating procedures in place. Do you use those to train the people who are coming in to do those things? Right? Is that
100%.
what's that?
100%.
Yeah. And
you have to. Go ahead. Sorry.
well, I was gonna say, if you didn't have those standard operating procedures in place, is when you're training somebody a good time to go through and develop those, because you're kind of going through the process anyways?
Absolutely. Right. So, as we have new systems in place, typically what I'll do, like, if whatever new thing is happening in our business on the sales cycle, I'm really focused on sales and marketing. I'll create a Loom video. I'll write down 10 steps. I'll put it into our Notion doc under our playbooks, and I'll say, okay, this is the system for X, how to do something. I definitely recommend using Loom because Loom is critical for asynchronous communication.
And all right, so you mentioned the magical word for me, and that's Notion. I'm a big fan of Notion. I use Notion in my personal life, and I have gotten the business that I work for to use that, and that's where we house our SOPs as well. In fact, I was the person who designed the operating procedure to how to build the operating procedures within Notion. So I greatly like that. Let's talk real quick about coaches and mastermind groups. Of course, that is a key important detail, and I'm wondering what is the value that somebody would look to. Like, let's say you've never been a part of a coaching team, or you've never been coached by anybody, you've never been on a mastermind group before. What are you looking for, number one, when you're perusing the options? And then what are you looking to get once you finalize and you pick somebody to work with?
So when I was working at an agency, at agencies like that were not my own. So Universal McCann is a big multinational agency. Starcom is another one. Even mid-sized companies. As a media buyer, we were constantly pitched on new opportunities. So 2004, we started getting pitched on, maybe it wasn't '04, maybe it was like '05. We started getting pitched on MySpace. So compared to just the average person on the street or my network of friends, I knew about things before the larger marketplace understood them. Another analogy would be, I pay attention to people like Gary Vaynerchuk, and he was talking about TikTok when it was just young people dancing, and so to my friends, I go to TikTok and I go to my friends and I say, look, TikTok is going to be big. You should be creating content on TikTok. Proven right. I listened to a podcast called the All In Podcast with a bunch of Jason Calacanis and a bunch of venture capitalists, and they predicted that there will be a hot swap and that the election will not be between Biden and Trump. Go to my friends, put it in writing. I want it to be noted for the historical records. And guess what? The election is no longer between Biden and Trump. A mastermind is like that, but for the intricacies of your business. And one of the things I got out of these various mastermind things that I'm paying attention to is that the marketplace and your offer is going to be different. The marketplace will want a different offer from a business when your interest rates are 0%, when the marketplace interest rates are 0% versus when they are like 7 or 6 or whatever they are now. When the interest, when the interest rates are 0%, people are very willing to exchange money to buy back their time because money is cheap. It's really easy to access money. Loans are coming in at a low interest rate. When interest rates are 6 or 7%, people will much rather hoard cash, meaning they will rather spend their their time so that they can save money. So, what is the implication for my business? The implication for my business is maybe people aren't willing to spend a lot on media management. Maybe they're much more interested in coaching or done with you services or lower cost pricing tiers that still allow them to work with us, but they will put some skin in the game as well rather than just being completely hands off. So that ability to learn from people who have a different purview of the world and see things differently and are looking at like all I'm doing is very myopic. I'm looking at my business, I'm looking at sales and marketing and refining my offering. I need to benefit from people who are looking at business or looking at other businesses who are looking at economics and have the ability to distill their insight into very easy to understand concepts. The other component is there are usually groups involved. So I get to see what other, the mastermind I'm in right now, it's sort of a mastermind slash coach thing. I see what other, I'm in a really advantageous position because I run a marketing firm. So I get to see the marketing challenges that other businesses face. That the things that are obvious to me are not obvious to them. Like things like retargeting and how to turn on retargeting in an effective way. That leads me to understand that if I say something about something that to me is just the basics, like how to turn on retargeting in a really effective way, that I have the ability to attract clients with something that is very basic to me, but not very basic to them. So just having insights from a lot of different perspectives that are outside of our organization become very helpful.
And of course, that coach and mastermind gives you the opportunity to kind of see into the crystal ball because you get an opportunity to hear what the other business owners are doing, and because you're in marketing, you are able to put whatever problems that they have through a lens of marketing and how you can apply that to your own business. And of course, hearing other people's problems or issues that they're facing gives you an opportunity to kind of see projections looking down the road to help solve other people's issues that they could be having.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey everyone, it's Chris Bean here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show. Now, of course, you mentioned the parallels between life management and entrepreneurship. How do the principles of managing one's life translate to building and scaling a successful business? Are there specific lessons that you can apply to both areas?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've been working on is grace. Like we're all going to make mistakes. And, for your life partner, your husband or wife, like grace is critical because they're going to make mistakes. We're going to make mistakes. Rub it, dirt off your shoulder. It's okay. Get up and move on. And the sooner you can get up and move on, the sooner you can move forward towards the goal you want to achieve. Whether that's having a great relationship or that's having a great business. Um, I make mistakes all the time. My team, they're amazing, but I don't see the mistakes that they make. I don't know if they make mistakes, but I presume like, you know, instead of spending $10 on a campaign, they might spend $15 on a campaign on a daily basis. But none of that matters. It's all within the guardrails of like, what's acceptable. The big mistakes don't happen. The big like deal breaker mistakes don't happen. And that becomes another point, which is we really both personally and professionally like to interrogate when we make small mistakes so that they remain small and they don't become big. Um, because we don't want to be in a position where something catches us off guard and it turns into a big problem for our clients.
And oftentimes, if you have your head down, you're not really looking at the numbers. Those small mistakes will compound, and then you'll lead into a big mistake, and you won't even see it coming.
Right. Which is why, multiple, in the business, multiple levels of redundancy are going to be very important. Um, Things like, a team member sets up a campaign, one of their peers reviews it, a supervisor reviews it, maybe even an account person, reviews it or asks some questions. So by the time it gets to the client, there's been multiple rounds of review, and we have communication systems between, like, for example, when we have a client conversation, then tasks need to be, change the creative or dial up or dial down the spending, whatever the case is, or change the objective from traffic ads to lead ads or email address capture. We'll put like communication in Trello, and then we'll take that Trello card and we'll put it into Slack under the channel for that advertiser. We'll tag the team members. So there's like two ways that people see the request. So that's, redundancy is going to be important overall.
Right. And of course, with this overlaid with, personal improvement, if you are working on yourself to improve yourself, then oftentimes you are helping the people that are around you. And if you're helping the people that are around you on the personal level, then they are improving. And if they're improving, then the business often improves. Like those things kind of go hand in hand, and it just overflows into whatever it is that, else that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just for me, it's grace. Like I want to examine, and I can't say I'm even like great at this on a personal level, but I think I'm starting to reap the benefits of why married men live longer than single men, right? Because they have someone who's like paying attention to their habits and like realizing when they're going off the rails in the wrong direction. And I think I do that for my wife as well. But I think just having someone looking over your shoulder and helping you live the best version of your life is going to be critical.
Yeah.
And marriage has been the absolute best thing in the world for me.
It is kind of nice to have that other person. You talk about, have like a kind of an outside viewpoint on whatever it is that you're doing, but also have somebody that would hold you accountable to the things that you say you're going to do so that you can follow through on them. But again, to help keep you from doing stupid things from time to time, because that's just as important as anything else.
Yeah, and the other direction too, like, there are times where I'll tell my wife literally for weeks I'm going to go see a movie. And I never go because like I'm tired and I'm just not that interested. She's like, "Go see a movie. Like, go grab a drink, get a bite, like take yourself on a self date. Like, just go hang out and enjoy something that you like to do." And that, because otherwise I'll just go weeks on end or months on end just working 6, 7 days a week. So and that's not good, and it's not healthy.
Yeah. And you need that other person sometimes there, that outside perspective to help keep you grounded, because otherwise you will very quickly fall into the all work and no play type of time.
That's right.
Yeah. Now, we talk about mindset, and mindset is a powerful driver to success. As somebody who has extensive experience in maintaining a positive and resilient mindset, and I think, of course, that has contributed to your achievements. How, are there specific mindsets or practices that you would recommend other entrepreneurs try to adopt into their day life?
Um, I'm not as good as I'm not. I think I think I know it's important, but practicing it is sometimes difficult. And I'll say when I'm not feeling good, I'll remove myself from the situation. And what that means in practice, I work from home. This is my home office. I'll just step outside and go into the backyard for a few minutes and like hang out there. Or maybe I'll just leave the house altogether, or I'll go for a walk. Um, those are some of the things I do to kind of like reset my brain. But the reality is sometimes things are going to not be easily solved at that moment. And that's again when I look for my wife to say, give me your perspective. Like, what do you think is happening here? Let me bounce an idea off of you. And at the end of the day, like it all comes back to you've got to fight, you've got to work hard, you've got to believe in yourself. And I believe in myself. A lot of people believe in me. Um, and when I forget that, I need to be reminded of that. I think I think mindset really is about having going back to systems and processes. It's about having the right systems and processes in place, coaches, groups of people who you can rely on to kind of like get you back where you need to be so you can perform at the level at which you need to perform. Entrepreneurship can be very lonely because even though I'm in the same physical space as my wife and my child, if she doesn't know what's going on with my business, she won't know. If all she hears is the good stuff and none of the bad stuff, she'll have no recollection. She'll have no understanding of what's actually happening unless I tell her. So I think it's important for people in an entrepreneurial setting to have that safety net of people that they can talk to. It could even be just, like I'll call up my friend, say, hey, let's go grab a drink and get a bite. So people are the critical part of that.
Well, I think, okay, so there's a couple of key mindsets there that I can extract, right? So you have the opportunity to step away when you know that you need time away, right? And then you have the mindset of asking for help, right? Don't be so full of it that you can't ask for help. And when people give you advice, you're not going to want to hear it. You're not going to want to ask for help. And then the advice that they give you, if it's real advice, if it's actually helpful, you're not going to want to listen to it. But that's the advice that you'd have to listen to most. And have a network of people that are around you that you can bounce ideas off of that are not necessarily connected to the business, because that outside perspective is so helpful. Because you talked about when you're in the forest, you only see the trees, you don't see the forest, right? And you need
Yeah,
people that are able to see the forest as opposed to just the trees that you're standing around. And I think that those key things are helpful to help keep any entrepreneur grounded, and on the right path towards growth, which is of course what everybody wants.
100%.
Yeah.
You need people. You
Yeah.
need people. And when you don't have people, that's the big problem.
Yes. Yes. Um, all right. So advertising is your bread and butter. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if you have any standard advertising success strategies in the current landscape that a business could use to help to grow.
Yeah. So the most important thing, you know, our thesis is that most companies are guessing at the marketing that works. They don't know. They're spending lots of time and money pushing out messages that are not validated by the marketplace. And then they wonder why their marketing isn't working. So the first thing we do, we have this smart scale system, and it's 5 steps. And the first step of this process starts with a sprint test. And the sprint test is a high impact and low cost set of tests where we seek to understand the problems that people are facing. Because the thing that unites us all in this world is that we all have problems. And people desperately want solutions to their problems. And if you have that solution, that's a direct path to sales. So when we formulate our marketing messages, whether you're a startup or a mid-sized company, even large enterprises, understanding the pain points that customers want you to solve is going to be key for that marketing message. So we test 30 different problem statements. Few of those will win. We'll then test 20 different solution statements. And those solutions are crafted around the problems that people want you to solve. And then we'll test images, 10 images. So in total, 60 different elements. It takes 2 weeks. It's $900. And the idea fundamentally is when you go to market and you run ads, these ads are much more likely to drive leads and sales for a business. And for us, it lowered our lead cost 76%. So we had leads coming in at $114. Now we have leads coming in at under $27. And the leads that are coming in at that from this sprint testing methodology are higher quality because we're also asking up to 15 different questions. We're using conditional logic in a meta lead form. When we get on a sales conversation with people, we know a lot more about them, which makes the conversation flow a lot smoother. And it's turning into more money and faster money for our business. So there's a level of velocity there. And it's something that you can turn on and off as needed. Not off, but just lower or increase. So we've deployed this for our clients, whether e-commerce or B2B. And it's a really meaningful way to understand the exact messages that people want from your business. So that's the first step, sprint test. And then you put together a media strategy. With this knowledge and insight about your customers, where should you be running ads? So we develop that. We launch the campaigns. We place pixels. We do attribution to understand where your conversions are coming from, understand the insights, and then scale up. So it's this 5-step process that allows a business to go from 0 to 60 in a few months and scale up their business. The key thing that is part of success is going to be training the algorithm. So when you talk about Meta, for example, there are, depending on the type of business you have, between 4 and 5 different things you can do to train the algorithm to find your best customers. And to understand how training the algorithm works, you can do this. Spend 5 minutes visiting the websites for Las Vegas hotels and casinos, restaurants, shows, etc. Your Facebook feed will be inundated with deals for Vegas. So what should you understand about that process? Meta is very good at pairing up a consumer's desires in the moment to a business that solves for their pain points. You looked at Vegas deals, now you're getting ads for Vegas. You want, as the business that's doing the advertising, you want Meta to do the same for your business. When people are searching for the thing that you offer, make sure that your ads are there. So how do you do that? Number 1, time in market. You'll do better in 3 months than you'll do in 1 month because the algorithm will start to learn who your customers are. So time in market is important. Number 2, broad targeting, age, gender, and location. Those are important because Meta has great data, and that data is used to pair up people to their interests right now and pairing up with businesses. Number 3 is going to be conversions API or CAPI. Conversions API connects to your CRM system or your sales system. So every conversion that comes in, Meta understands. And when you're looking at lead generation, it knows when a lead turns into a sales call, for example. Number 4 is going to be lead forms. If you're doing B2B or some sort of lead generation thing, lead forms that have dead ends. The idea being that, let's say my ideal customer, and this is, my ideal customer does $3 million in revenue. Okay, if you're doing less than, if I ask you on a lead form, what is your revenue, and you choose under $1 million, if you choose that option, I'm going to say thank you, but you're not the right person. Have a good day. I don't even want your information. That tells Meta that that's not the right person, and find me fewer people that are going to choose that option, and find me more people that are going to choose $3 million or above. And over time, you train the algorithm. And the last way you train Meta is the content of your ads tell Meta what the ad is for. So, for example, if I'm going to reach out to nonprofits, because I love working with nonprofits, very meaningful, they're very nice people, they're always very grateful for the work that we do for them. If we work with nonprofits, I'm going to say, hey, directors of communication, or hey, nonprofits. I'm going to call out the actual business that I'm talking to, and I'm going to list a set of solutions for them. Meta will understand that I'm talking to nonprofit leaders and put my ad in front of nonprofit leaders.
Yeah, well, that was wildly helpful. And I think that goes right into my next topic here, is AI in advertising. Of course, everybody has, opportunity to be on ChatGPT, and if they're making all kinds of ads and, business type of things with this AI. How do you see AI shaping the future of advertising? And then what benefits can businesses gain from leveraging AI to help them in advertising?
Yeah, so AI is really good for helping you get up to speed on something maybe you don't know as well as much. So, for example, if you don't have a marketing strategy, your marketing is not going to work. It's not going to be effective. Because what you say in your ads is a direct reflection of who you talk to, what they want from your business, and the transformative value that you offer. The strategy also helps you understand like what you want out of your advertising. So if you don't have a strategy, then it's a marketing strategy, an understanding of your customers, at the transformative value that you offer. You can use AI to understand what your marketing, to give you a framework of what your marketing strategy could be. I wouldn't use it verbatim, I'd tinker with it. But AI is really good at giving you at getting you to a point where you understand the basics about your business in a way that is meaningful, that you don't have to pay someone. The challenge with that process is that you may not know what to look for, which is why you should work with a marketing company like ours so we can help you with that. AI is good for like when we write SEO content. We booked over $100,000 of revenue by improving our SEO from a domain authority of 22 to 34, and it took us 6 months to do that. And we're continuing to work on our SEO. So when we write 2 to 3 articles a week, here's our process. Number one, we do the research to understand which keyword we want to win for. Number two, we'll go to AI and we'll say, hey, please write a SEO optimized article about, email address retargeting or something. Okay, so we write the article. Then our team goes in and edits the article, makes it sound like us because we have a certain way that we like to type. We use a lot of like verbs when we start sentences because it's a sales page. We'll pass that content through like originality.ai to make sure that doesn't sound like AI, because Google doesn't want that, and people don't want that either. And so AI speeds up the process saves you probably several hours on the process, but you cannot just let AI do its thing completely. There has to be human in the loop and human intervention to ensure that you're successful.
And I would say to piggyback on that, with the little bit that I played with AI, the way that you prompt it, the way that you ask it to do whatever the output that you want is crucial. Just as when you're talking with people, you have to ask the question in such a way that everybody can understand. We talked about being like the comedian. You have to have the pauses right, the emphasis right. When you do that correctly on a person-to-person level, then you're able to communicate the point to them clearly. But when you're talking to that AI, if you just give it real kind of broad guidelines of what you want, you're going to get something broad and not very helpful for you. But if you can very systematically and strategically deliver your point so that you get the right output, then that makes it so much more helpful than otherwise. And I think that if businesses could take a little bit more time in that prompting phase, because I see it often, and it's pretty easy to tell these days when a business is relying on AI for advertising, whether that's for images or whether that's for whatever the output for the text that they're using. If it's got lots of emojis and stuff like that, okay, yep, this is AI. Swipe that away, especially in emails. It's just so clear to see these things. But if you could prompt it a little bit better, and then you take it, you edit it on the human level to make it adopted for your business. You make it sound like you and deliver your message. And then you put it back through an AI detection to say, hey, is this AI? How much percentage of it is AI? And let's make it sound a little bit more human-like. And by the way, you can also just tell it to be more human-like from the get-go. You can also feed it information that is yours and say, hey, write a text that is similar to this in this style. And then like business owners are like, oh, AI is the answer. Type, type, type. Oh, and then the output says, as an AI business model, I don't know, da, 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 and they just put that up there. No, well, obviously you have to do a little bit better than that. Like it's not just it's not a genie that you wish for and now it just gives you everything you answer. Or maybe it is because it gives you everything you ask for. But if you don't ask for the right thing, like with a genie, you end up at the bottom of the lake somewhere.
I think what people are flawed, and people like to see slightly, in my opinion, I think people like to see slightly flawed versions of things. And when you look at music, like the perfect version of a song is going to be the one recorded in the studio. But people love live entertainment, live, even listening to the recording of a live show because it's flawed, it's human, it's authentic. The beats will be a little bit off, the tone will be a little bit off in some places, but that's what makes it like human. It's almost like you're telling AI, just make it a little bit flawed in the way that I like to write that's flawed, make it like that. Make it just a little bit flawed.
All right. It's really interesting that you talk like that because the business that I work for, the owner, I work very closely with, and he'll put advertisements out with sometimes misspelled things on purpose because it pulls people attention in. And I have a friend of mine who thinks it's ridiculous because it seems like, and I hear this from other people too, it seems like, man, couldn't you have taken the time to just proofread this so it didn't have all these, or this one spelling error, whatever it is. But sometimes that thing is what pulls people in so they continue reading.
So on that note, there's a type of ad that's working really well right now so it's Venn diagram ads. And so here's why it's related. So Venn diagrams are good for B2B and even some B2C, but really B2B comparison, like how do you communicate that you're going to save them lots of time and money? Or either comparison or B2B ads. I'm sorry, comparison or Venn diagram ads. And you have a square. There's only so much stuff you can put in a square to make it interesting. I'm seeing a lot of ads right now where the Venn diagram is like, you know what a Venn diagram is? Two overlapping circles, but the text is unreadable. It's spelled correctly, but just there's so much text in it that you can't read it. And what does a human want to do? I want to click. I want to learn more. Now you're engaged. You're in their marketing pool. Now you have a chance to read the top of the page, the hero section of the page, and now there's a chance for me to sell you. And this all goes back to the flawed human experience. And people will react to things that are imperfect in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Robert, I gotta say thank you. Thank you for being such a wonderful guest and sharing this immensely valuable knowledge and insight about advertising, entrepreneur, business growth with us. And before we wrap up, do you have any key thoughts or final takeaways you'd like to leave our listeners with?
The world we live in right now is based on authenticity. And you know that because when you look at stars like Emily Blunt and Tom Cruise, they're highly polished. And the people who we pay the most attention to in most of our daily lives are the people on TikTok who have flaws and blemishes and their own problems. And I know business is about people. And the more authentic you are, I think the better off you'll be.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And, Robert, if our listeners wanted to find out more about you or get in touch with you, where could they go to do that?
Brillmedia.co, B as in boy, RILL media.co.
Excellent. I'll be sure to leave that in the show notes as well. Listeners, stay tuned for more inspiring conversations on the Prestigious Initiative. Until next time, this is Chris Bean signing off.